What's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. Alright, so two more players to consider in regards to the players that I've done homework on: Peat and Cenac. Peat, I did as little homework as I've done with anybody. Today was just not the day I was doing the most of homework. I got the very loose gist of who he is, so I'm definitely not the person to talk to in regards to him. I'm going to do more homework on him, but I kind of want to get the video out tonight. Because if I don't know when I'm going to do that, because I have playoffs to cover and predictions to give on each and every series, and then the Lakers to cover. So it's going to be a lot more of my face in this camera, and so I figured I better get this video out now. And if I take a little time off this week between studying players, at least I would have gotten the last ones out the way, because I think that might be how I handle this. So Peat, loosely understanding him, he's a power forward, can definitely explode off of the floor. He's a power dunker, somebody whose jump shot is a bit iffy, somebody whose defense is a bit iffy, and that is the concern. But ultimately, this is a very strong player with some size. Let me take a look at what it is that is available for me in regards to him. 6'8", 235. One thing I'm noticing about this draft, you guys, is the bigs that are coming in are pretty heavy, man. Pretty heavy. You got a 255 here, 250 there, 240 there, 235 there, 255 there. They got some heavy guys coming into this draft that are going to make it significantly more important that you have size ready to defend and bang with these people. So as I often pay attention to with the league and where it's headed, and when these drafts come in, you get a whole new load of young players that bring a certain thing to the league that you ultimately have to react to. And the one thing I'm starting to notice, these 250 guys are becoming more and more prevalent. You're seeing more of these people enter this league now than maybe you've seen in the last several drafts. So yeah, it's a lot of size in this draft, man. Whole lot of size. Hefty 250 dudes, and this is a guy who's 235, who plays big. You know, Peat, let's see, he shoots 58% from the field per 36 minutes, 52%, excuse me. So that's pretty solid. 35% from three. The jump shot, like I said, is a bit broken. Free throw line, 62%, not so great. Average 14 points, 2 assists from 5 boards. You'd like to see him rebound a little more. I don't know if there's some context to that I'm missing, but I do think that there'll be opportunities for him to improve as a rebounder. And I just like what I saw from an explosive standpoint. There's going to be a learning curve for him. They're probably going to have to work on the jumper. It's just a little off, to say the least, based on what I was listening to this morning in regards to the young player. But, you know, this is a player out of Arizona who's pretty damn exciting. Definitely somebody who's going to be a lob threat. Definitely somebody who's going to get some easy buckets in the paint. Somebody who's going to be very fun to watch, an explosive power forward. And, you know, there's a lot to like there. So that's about as much as I was able to gather. Like I said, I did very loose homework this morning. Probably listened to maybe an hour or so. And that's significantly less than I've given other players. Haven't watched as many highlights, so definitely do not quote me on the Peat stuff. So that's about as much as I'm going to say. More to learn. Definitely a nice power forward coming in with some size. We'll need to work on some things, but his athleticism, his explosiveness, and his motor is going to translate right away. I can tell you that for certain. All right, so let's get into a player that I did a lot of homework on yesterday, Cenac Jr. So the thing about Cenac Jr. is he's kind of the opposite of the Ngongbas and the Boozers, in a sense that a lot of what he does passes the eye test, but when you look at the stats, he falls short. As to where the guys like Ngongba, they're not very appealing to watch per se, but when you look at the stats, he's killing in every angle. Cenac is a guy who reminds me of a few guys. Christian Wood, immediately, because he's like a 6'11" guy, 7'5" wingspan, who can shoot a lot of jumpers. mid-range, three-point line. He's more comfortable playing like a guard. He likes to dribble more than he probably should. So he's learning how to play to his size. 6'11", 240. Once again, another heavy guy. Definitely a lob threat. Definitely a power slam guy. Somebody who can get a lot of boards. Out of Houston, I'm a believer in what I saw. That's what I want to say. But I also respect the numbers are not exciting. Averaged 7 boards, 9 points. Didn't play a whole lot of pick and roll. One of the things that stood out was he didn't play the roll man in the pick and roll very much in Houston, and that was something that perplexed one of those experts I was listening to. So I thought that was something that needed to be pointed out as well on our channel, that he probably should be explored in regards to pick and roll stuff. In the big leagues, they can use him a lot better than they did in Houston in that regard. And that's something you're going to see a small sample size about in regards to him. 19 years old on draft day, out of New Orleans. Houston is where he went to college. 6'11", as I said, 7'5" wingspan. But he loves to play like a guard, man. Doesn't shoot the free throw all that well. 62%, not that great. 33% from three, I think that'll improve. 45% from the field, which is not great for a guy that's under the basket enough of the time. But he's extremely explosive. Another guy he reminds me of, I said Christian Wood. He kind of reminds me of, what's that guy's name? Oh, man, his name won't come to mind. He used to play for the Suns. Starts with a C. Marquise Chris. He reminds me of Marquise Chris in a way. That's like his low side. Marquise Chris was a guy who stretched the floor, known for power slams, known for catching lobs. Really wasn't that great defensively, but always had the tools, but just never really able to put it all together. That's who he reminds me on the low side. Kind of plays like Bobby Portis a little bit with the jumpers, being a big size guy, plays that way. He looks a little like Anthony Davis out there, but he doesn't play like Anthony on the offensive or defensive side. Can stretch the floor some. Definitely can improve as a rebounder. Highly touted out of high school, but just it never quite came together when he went to Houston. But the tools for him being a unicorn is there. The wingspan tools are there. The explosiveness is there. The ability to dribble as a big man is there. The ability to stretch the floor from all three levels is potentially there to improve. The shot blocking prowess is there. He can get better at it, though. He can get a lot better in all these areas. If he puts it all together, he can be a hell of a monster. A lot of people are probably going to compare him to guy who got drafted out for the Miami Heat. What is his name, man? His name is escaping me at the moment. But a lot of people are going to compare him to that player out of the Heat. Let me see if I can look at this name right now. If I can take a look at it. But I'll tell you this. This is what I have to say about Chris Cenac. I'm buying my stock now. Me personally, understanding the low side of things, if he turns out to be Christian Wood or Marquise Chris, that's kind of tough. High side, if he turns out to be like Bobby Portis or something better than that, that's pretty solid. As a backup center, strong floor spacing power forward, he's extremely intriguing to me. And I just think that when you talk about players in the NBA, you're looking for NBA prototypes. I think it's very easy to look at statistics and say, yo, he's not contributing here, he's not contributing this way or that way. But I think context is to be taken into account, and keeping it simple a lot of times when you're looking for NBA prospects is probably your better bet. What you got is a 6'11" guy with 7'5" wingspan who likes to play like a guard. May not be the greatest at it, but at the very least, he's going to be able to do things that most players his size cannot do. I think that's worth a lottery, not a lottery pick per se, depending on who else you like in this draft, but it's worth taking a flyer on. It's definitely worth taking a flyer on. It's definitely worth a first round draft pick somewhere between 18 and 25. I think that's an easy bet. I'm a super believer in him in that range, because you're talking about an NBA. prospect. You know, we're talking about the NBA, and when you're talking about the NBA, you like tools, length, height. You want guys who can, get lobs, rebounds, tip passes, be deflections and things like that. When you talk about a guy with his size, he's going to stumble into those type of things. And when you talk about the ability to dribble, his first step looks ridiculously fast for a player his size. He has a very explosive first step that I didn't hear many people say. But when he looks to take the ball off the dribble on his opponent, especially if he's going up against big dudes, he's going to beat them off the dribble, and he's big enough to finish. My Laker team is benefiting greatly from a guy Jackson Hayes, who kind of is more of a true center than Chris Cenac, but they're going to affect the game in similar ways, in the sense that Chris can catch the lobs too. He's not quite as bouncy as Jackson Hayes, but he's close. And then you talk about what Jackson has turned into, the struggles that Jackson had in New Orleans, the player that we received when we got him from New Orleans, some of the struggles we had through the first 2 seasons, and then look at where he is right now. Chris Cenac has a lot more talent than Jackson Hayes naturally. A lot more. It's not even close. So when you're talking about these two players, it's like if we could, the Lakers, turn Jackson Hayes into what we see right now, which is a formidable backup center who's really helping us, then we could definitely turn Chris Cenac into that very same thing at a higher level. Now, I think the thing about Cenac is that he probably would be best to play the 4. This is where he's more so like Anthony Davis than anything else. I don't really see Cenac as a center. He has a center's body, but he has more of a floor spacer's game. And because he wants to play the perimeter more, and because he's not particularly physical, I don't believe, although he's big enough to be and probably can grow into being that, I think I want him to be able to explore his 3-level ability, play the perimeter more comfortably than maybe most would be comfortable at the center position. He's going to play some 5 for sure, especially in small ball lineups, but I would like him next to a Wemby, next to a Jokic. Well, maybe not Jokic, because I need a little bit more athleticism on rim protecting stuff. But next to the guy who is ultimately going to be a rim protector for me is essentially what I'm saying. I can play him next to a Jalen Duren. I can play him next to Rudy Gobert. I could play him next to Jaren Jackson, because he's going to stretch the floor in a way that allows for spacing to be comfortable. He looks comfortable from behind the arc. And I think if he continues to work on his overall game, what you end up having is a unicorn. You have a complete unicorn. He doesn't look like he's even done growing. So I wouldn't be surprised if he reaches 7 feet. Not at all. So this is somebody who, like, when you listen to all the people who've talked about him online, I've watched a good portion of videos yesterday. I probably watched at least, without exaggerating, probably about 2.5 to 3 hours of commentary on Chris Cenac. Probably watched about an hour of his highlights. Most of the people who were considering Chris Cenac are down on it. They're down on it. Didn't like what they saw out of him in Houston. They don't believe in the numbers. They think he explodes off the screen, but they just don't think he affects a lot of winning. They don't think the motor's there. But a lot of the stuff that people are complaining about in regards to him are the same thing they are saying about Khalil Ware. And that's who I couldn't remember from Miami. That's who I think is a loose comparison in a way. I think Khalil Ware is more of a traditional big. In fact, I think those two can play with one another, alongside one another. Cenac's more of a true 4. Khalil's more of a 5. If Miami could get their hand on Cenac, that would be amazing, by the way. But just the same, when I consider Khalil Ware and what people were saying about him last year was the fact that he didn't have a motor, he tended to disappear, he wasn't necessarily somebody that you could trust to stay engaged. And those are the kind of things they were saying about Chris Cenac. But if you bring a kid to a situation where the coaching is good, the environment's vibrant enough, you can get the most out of him. One of the reasons why I thought Khalil Ware was going to work out was because he was falling asleep in Iowa or somewhere in the middle of America with nothing is, going on. You bring him to a place like Miami, you have him playing with Spoelstra, and that's like a combination of things that are going to keep him engaged and people who are going to get the most out of him. And so I think the same about Chris Cenac. You're talking about somebody who has a very strong prototype for this league. At that height, with that length, and that skill set, the likelihood that fails is not very high. Now, the likelihood that it reaches a ceiling varies, but you rarely have Marquise Chris's in this league. You're going to get a Bobby Portis, you're going to get a Christian Wood, you know what I'm saying? Those guys are valuable until they're not anymore. You see what I'm saying? Big people, Nas Reed, players like that. Like, if Chris Cenac is another one of those players, you see how valuable those players are in all of their situations. And you talk about the high side of a Chris Cenac is somebody like Karl Anthony Towns. If you're talking about that level, if he reaches his absolute ceiling. In this league where size and length is key, and unicorns are so hard to find, Kristaps Porzingis, these big dudes that can stretch the floor, block shots, catch lobs, dribble, like that. You don't really want to pass up on that in this league. You don't want to pass up on that. And I'm listening to all these guys who are experts, and they're essentially down on this kid, and I'm just saying, because they're down on him, I'm buying on my stock now because I understand the league. Probably more than I understand this game of basketball is my understanding of the NBA. When you're talking about trying to build an NBA team, Chris Cenac is somebody who you definitely snatch while everybody's low on him. And if you happen to get a Marquise Chris, so be it. But there's more likely you get a Nas Reed. It's more likely you get a high-level Christian Wood. It's more likely you get somebody like that than the idea that you get somebody that can't do this at all, a Bol, for example. I think that's really what it is. Are you so afraid that he's going to turn into Marquise Chris or Bol that you miss out on the potential of him turning into Nas Reed or Bobby Portis? Or Kristaps Porzingis? And at 19 years old, the problem that he has is that he wants to be a guard. A center like that who wants to be a guard is a problem until he develops who he actually is. Then he becomes a commodity, because now you have him honing those skills and he's not a stiff. You try to close out on him from behind the arc, you can actually put it on the floor and go to the rim. If you leave him open, he can hit a shot from behind the arc. He can dribble, pull up from mid-range and hit the jump. And the mid-range shot is so high arc that it's very difficult to defend. Talking about Wemby at the highest of height levels of that. It's like, when you talk about these type of players and you're dealing with Wemby out there, you're dealing with Jokic out there, you're dealing with Karl out there, you can't be so low on a Cenac that you leave him on the board and let him go somewhere else. You take another guard off and leave him on the board and then find yourself struggling with those type of talents. It's too hard to find what Cenac is, man. That's essentially what I'm saying. He may not be the best version of what he is, but even a bad version of what he is at 19 years old is most definitely worth taking. And so I think there are going to be more scouts who see things my way. And I do believe he's probably going to be gone before the 18th pick or around the 18th, 19th pick. And if there's anybody that I think this league will reach on and take well before they should, it's probably Cenac. I would not be overly surprised to see him go in the 11, 12 range. It would not shock me to see an OKC to snatch him with the 12th pick or something like that. Not at all. Because at the end of the day, though, there are some other players in this draft that I like a lot in that range. None of them are 6'11" with 7'5" wingspan guard skills. You know what I'm saying? Who can catch a lob. I think it's a huge mistake leaving that player on the board too long just because they didn't have a great rookie season or because they don't understand that they're 7 foot tall. That's a mistake. Because you could teach a 7-footer that he's 7 foot tall. And then once he figures out how to be a big man, now all those guard skills become extremely valuable to you. So you pick him up right now and you stash him G League for 2 years. Because if you're asking him to be who you want him to be right now, all he's going to do is frustrate. He should probably stay in school. I think he would benefit greatly from staying in school. But the problem is with him is that he's already committed at this point to moving forward. Now, it's not technically too late for him to do so, to go back to school. But I do think that he's made his decision to move on to the NBA. I was listening to some people who are, represent his school, Houston. And I was reading comment sections on one of their YouTube local guys, and one of the fans was essentially saying that he thinks Cenac and Fleming should both go back to college, stay for one more year because they're both too young and they're not ready. Now, I don't think I've heard too many people say that about Fleming's, but it's been my opinion that Fleming's is not ready. That I think Fleming's has all-star upside, but and natural ability that will translate to the NBA right away, but he has some fundamental things that he's going to have to get better at, and he probably should wait before coming to the NBA to do so. Off-ball layup stuff, things like that. They both play for this Houston squad. Cenac is a guy who, like I said, I think he should be drafted, but I think he should be stashed. Because if you're asking him to play right now, he's likely going to struggle. He's going to do a bunch of dumb stuff that you don't like. He's going to be pulling up, trying to take people off the dribble, turning the ball over. That's one of his biggest issues, is the turnover ratio is terrible right now. So he's playing closer to his floor than his ceiling in development right now. He's not a pretty player to watch develop. You do not want to bring him to your situation if you need your center right now, because I don't know that he develops to be that center. And I definitely don't think he's ready to play any of that right now. I think he's the guy you develop to be your Nas Reed, your Bobby Portis, your Christian Wood. You're hoping to draft a big power forward who stretches the floor and who has the ability to dribble the ball, and he can get better in that area. So that's really what it is. I just think if he was 6'5", he would be happy, because his game is probably that of somebody who should be 6'5". But he's not. He's 6'11", and that only works when you are able to switch out of it and be that big man. He don't know how to be a big man right now. Not really. But like I said, when he figures it out, then all that guard stuff really becomes awesome for your basketball team. So, if you have a strong development situation, if you're a rebuilding situation, a team like Chicago, a team with good coaching like Miami, a team like Brooklyn who's just getting started with their development situation, Memphis, yeah, maybe. Although they have a couple of those guys, G.G. Jackson may be in that same vein, but they could play with one another, that kind of thing. But teams that are just getting started in their rebuilding situation with strong G League affiliates and pretty strong coaching, I think would be great for Cenac. But you got to understand that you're not going to play him his first year. You're probably not going to play him his second year either. That's just what it is. He is a slow burn, or rough watch developing. You know what I mean? He's gonna not make his coach happy next year if things are staying the way they are. You're gonna be yelling at this kid a lot, coach. He really just need to he's gonna have to learn a lot before he's ready, and I just think he should probably stay in school. But if he doesn't stay in school, I'm very comfortable with reaching for him, because I think that his low end is so worth it for what his high end could potentially be. If he's a dud, this is the best type of dud, because at the very worst, he's going to come in and be able to stretch the floor in garbage time minutes and block shots in garbage time minutes. Keep your fans in the seat because he didn't dunk the ball in some incredible way when the game's out of whack. You're up by 30 and he just made the dunk of the game. Or down by 30, he just made the dunk of the game. He's one of those, man. And his energy's going to be there for you. And as he develops, he's gonna work his way. So, yeah, consider him a 4. Really needs to develop with a center's body and a center's length. And with the size, you're going to want to play him at the 5. But you would better have a strong shot-blocking rebounder at that 4 spot. Or Peyton Watson or something like that at that 4 spot to make a difference there. That's another guy you can compare him to a little bit like Peyton Watson, only Peyton's significantly more defensive sound. But on the offensive side, that's kind of like the mold, I think, a little bit. Stretch 5, stretch 4. Yeah, I'm buying on my stock now. I'm a believer in what the idea of Chris Cenac is. I think I'm going to have to wait 3-4 years before I see the reality of a good Chris Cenac. I would love for him to go back to school, but if he ain't going back to school, I want him on my G League affiliate for the next 2 years, learning how to be 7 feet in the NBA, learning how to be a big, and keeping all those guard skills and honing them in, getting better at not turning the ball over, getting better at, some of the stuff. Playmaking stuff was pretty interesting. He made some really good heads-up passes that I saw as well in the highlights. Though there wasn't much conversation about his playmaking, I thought that some of the passes kind of made me go, okay, you can do a little of that. So there's some playmaking juice there, a little playmaking juice that can be honed in. So again, this guy thinks he's a guard, so you got to be patient with him in that regard. But I think the energy's there, the explosiveness is there. He's going to be fun to watch, but he tends to go in and out of focus, just like a 19-year-old sometimes when they're not overly engaged in what they got going on, it's going to get frustrating. So I expect him to be, he's raw. That's the word. He is likely one of the more raw prospects in this draft. But do you talk about a prototype that you would love to develop and mold? If you got patience, you're gonna have a hell of a weapon 4 years from now, 5 years from now. It's gonna be worth developing him. He's one of those, very worth developing, especially if you're just getting started with your development process, your rebuilding process. So Brooklyn, Memphis, Sacramento, those are the teams. Washington could be interesting for him because you're not going to have any expectations for him playing anytime soon. And his ceiling may be back up, 6th man of the year type stuff, Nas Reedish. So you're talking about him developing behind Anthony Davis, next to Alex Sarr. Washington could be a good spot for him, but I don't think Washington's going to have a draft pick in his range. But type of situation could be interesting. Chicago, I think, is a good situation for him. Miami, I really like the idea of them pairing him, Bam, and Khalil Ware together. That makes Miami a nightmare of a 7-foot wingy type thing. If you can put that type of thing together, that could be fun. Yeah. And as a Laker fan, if I'm being honest with you, I really would feel comfortable taking him at 26. I think we're probably gonna. I didn't check to see what we draft last. Maybe that's up now. Since today I'm recording this at the end of the regular season, all the games have been played, and now we're locked into what the draft lottery situation looks like. Officially, we're official now, so I can tell you exactly what pick the Lakers have. 25. So I think Chris will be going by 25. Unfortunately for us, but if he's on the board, I would say I like us for him long term. Him and Adu Thiro could be amazing. I think that the shot blocking prowess, the fact that you're investing in your center position, I would feel very good about bringing Chris Cenac in at the 25 because I think that's well below where you expect him to go in this draft. At this point, they have him going 21 on Tankathon to Detroit with Minnesota's pick that they have. putting him next to, floor spacing in Detroit is always important because the main players that they have can't stretch the floor. So I like that situation for Cenac long term. I don't expect him to play anytime soon. But you're talking about a team that has been known to help centers develop to being their best selves. We watched them do good things with Drummond. We watched them do good things with what's my man who made the All-Star team this year with Detroit? Names are not coming to mind, but Duran. So I think that would be a good spot for Cenac. And then you got Atlanta, who has 22nd. If Detroit were to pass on him, I think that could be an interesting spot for him as well because they have no pressure on anybody playing right now. They got their front court solidified, so they can let him wait. Chris Cenac going to 76ers, playing with Joel. That could be a good situation. So it's a damn good chance he ain't going to be on the board for the Lakers because I can see all of these teams being interested in him that are in that range, man. New York, that would be good for a team like New York who doesn't really have needs at that position but would love to have a player like that 3 years from now being a star for their team or something close to it. So, man, I do think he'll be gone. But if he happens to be around at 25, I would feel very good that the Lakers take that piece and add it to an already bouncy future front court for the Lakers. Bouncy. That's what it is. Athleticism and strength, speed. Cenac's going to be able to provide all of that. Stretching the floor in an ever-needing floor spacing unicorn appreciating league. Chris Cenac should not be left on the board too long. He's too damn naturally gifted in some very, very key areas for a big man. And the length and the tools are absolutely undeniable. The first step is real. I think there is balance to say that you respect Agongba and all the different things that he does that doesn't necessarily show up on the tape. The good screen setting and I value that piece. I respect what he can do. I think you can win with a player like that. But you also got to have balance to say sometimes you got to keep it real simple. You got to ignore all the nerd stuff and just say, what do you have in front of you? You got a 7-footer essentially with a 7'5" wingspan who plays like a guard, jumps out the gym. I'm not letting the numbers psych me out of keeping it very simple with him. You bring him to you and you work on what you need to work on to make him better, and you take your time with him. That's what you do. You don't sit there and say, well, he can't do the Gongba stuff, so he should be left on the board to the second round. It is a grave mistake. Absolutely grave mistake when you consider the length, the height, the tools, and the guard skills in that body that he brings to the table. It's a grave mistake. So that's what I got to say. Buying my Chris Cenac stock now. I'm higher on him than basically everybody that I've listened to. I think they're all talking about passing him up and leaving him on the board. I heard one guy say you leave him on the board well into the second round. I think that is absolute nonsense. You do not let a guy like Chris Cenac get into the second round. He is definitely raw. He is definitely not rated at all. But the size and the length and the skill set and the natural ability and the explosiveness must be valued in this league. BDL 44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.